This is Pete Moore on Halo Talks NYC. I have the pleasure of having Michele Zipper, a member of the Wonder Ring through marriage, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and the co-founder of the Well Center in Armonk, and a good friend of mine and the Square. Michele, welcome to the show.
Hi, Pete. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So over the last several years, you've become somewhat of an expert in this field, and obviously there's a growing need for self-improvement, self-enhancement, and there's a lot of tools and there's a lot of coaching that's gone on, which has turned into a craft and a skill that are really going to elevate people to the next level and change outcomes along the way. So talk about your journey and kind of where you are now. I know you've gotten a lot of education, as well as being an active mother of three and a wife and a fitness enthusiast. So tell us what you've learned, what you're doing, and how this could become part of the overall Halo sector.
Absolutely. I think everybody comes to wellness and comes to health in their own journey. And for me, it was a journey about the past 10 years, 12 years. It all kind of started, usually people come when they get sick, someone they know gets sick. And, for me, it was my husband kind of came down with Lyme about 10, 12 years ago. I don't remember. And, so I kind of jumped in. We weren't accepting medicine to kind of heal him.
Yeah.
We jumped right in. I started cooking every meal for him and really learning kind of the start of my nutrition, and my education. So it was kind of on the job training.
Wow.
And then a few years later, my son got really sick with an autoimmune as well. And that's when I was like, I am not accepting, no for an answer from anything. And I kind of dug in really deep and tried to understand functional medicine, the ins and outs of your immune system, your gut, your hormones, all of this, and really try to, it just really kind of brought it full circle for me. So, after about 5 years of living it, I went back to school. I was actually a graphic designer for many years.
Right.
And I was just like, so I went and got, my IIN, my health coaching degree. I got my master's degree. And it was great. I was able to coach people. I was able to kind of get them a little bit jump started on their healthy lifestyle, make some changes, but it wasn't enough. I found that I kept telling people, we need answers. We need to really dig in. I was sending people to functional medicine doctors or, to labs to really get their lab work done. And then finally I was like, nah, I can do this. So I went back and, got my functional diagnostic nutrition degree. And it's been incredible so far because we've really been able to find answers. I look at all of the systems. I look at your hormones, your immune system, your digestion, your detoxification, oxidation, your energy production, your nervous system. So all of your systems, because they're all intertwined. And when one thing is kind of out of balance or homeostasis, the entire system kind of gets out of whack. And then once you start to see symptoms, your systems are already out of whack, right? So you have a stomach ache, you're having constant stomach aches, you're having constant headaches. That's not normal. And I think so many people normalize symptoms. They live with stomach ache. I lived with stomach ache for 10 years, and then all of a sudden I was like, let me just try, kicking my milk habit and giving up dairy. And next thing you know, I was even in the hospital at one point.
Wow.
I was healthy again. My stomach was, I was not. So I think that's kind of been my journey. And
when you went back to school for all these different, components of education, were they all kind of siloed where you kind of had to almost weave a thread between all of them to figure out, okay, here's a holistic approach to what needs to happen. And each one of these was hey, I'm actually learning, a skill, or I'm learning, the history of, and now it's okay, I got to take that and kind of filter it up and almost weave a blanket, if you will, of now I know how to actually approach this, where historically it's been, hey, you got a stomach issue. Okay, go to a gastro, you
Right.
got an issue with your knee, go to, podiatrist, so do you feel like you've kind of got to the top of the mountain, if you will, of the Halo symptom sector?
I feel like you're never really at the top of the mountain. I feel like this is just an ever-changing, landscape. But yes, I think not necessarily through my education, but I think through life, I have weaved it all together. So I think between, I got my first health coaching degree, great. That was able to help me kind of coach people through. I got my master's, which gave me the certificate. I don't necessarily believe that added much, but then the functional diagnostic nutrition program, that really added the science behind it. And that's the part that I was really missing, is really understanding like the why and how your body truly works in order to make these changes. But I think ultimately a lot of really what has kind of formed my business and formed what I do with clients is really just life in general. And for me, it's been questioning everything I do so that I live on a daily basis. I live aligned with who I am, right?
Yeah.
And what I want. And so I've taken things from, I have a functional personal trainer that I work with who's actually at my center. And I've taken things from him. I've taken, things from my co-founder who's an acupuncturist. I've taken so much from the Eastern medicine sector. So I've really kind of taken things and I figure out what works for me. And I think really functional medicine and functional health is listening to your body and knowing what your body needs and what it doesn't. And what your body can tell you everything if you really just stop and take the time to listen.
Yeah. So when you diagnose someone, do you now have effectively, like a very regimented checklist of here's all the questions I need to ask, or is a lot of it, interactive and it kind of leads you down a path to say, aha, like here's like the root cause of what's going on?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think, I don't diagnose because I'm technically not a doctor. So, but you don't need to diagnose because I think sometimes diagnoses, is that the right word?
Yeah.
Diagnoses sometimes pigeonhole you into what you think you need to do versus, functional nutrition. We look at the entire body as a whole. So, because if you have a diagnosis, you might only focus on that one thing and miss like 4 other different hidden stressors that could possibly be affecting you. I think as far as intakes go, I do have a proper intake form, a very long one. So I look at your symptoms, I look at your history and your lifestyle. But then it also, I don't just treat the paper. I don't just say you have this symptom, we're going to create this protocol. I take everything into consideration, including your history and what you're feeling at the moment. And then I create a personalized protocol for everybody.
Gotcha. So you started the Well Center, in Armonk. What prompted you to say, what I'm trying to accomplish doesn't exist somewhere else? Obviously, you've kind of checked the box of like the personal frustration, which I think any business, needs to be based on a personal frustration or really doesn't have a reason to be. But what's the benefit of having the bricks and mortar location? Do you feel like that's an easy and safe place for someone to come in and say, okay, you are the authority, not just on paper or on the internet, but having a place that you could have people come to? And then what are some of the clients, what are they saying about the results?
Yeah. I mean, I think having a brick and mortar is just, you have that FaceTime that's not through a screen. And I think there is nothing better than that. So, when I'm hanging, I do virtual as well. So I do virtual and at the center. But when you're at the center and you're in front of people, it's just, there's just nothing like it. We get to actually talk face to face, have a conversation. We sometimes get involved with a bunch of the practitioners and we're all just sitting and having conversations with clients. And it just creates a really warm community, which is one of our pillars, is just warmth and education. And people are just always learning from us. And I think, we are a touch-based business, not me personally, but, a lot of the practitioners that work with me. So we do need a brick and mortar. And it's just created a resource for a lot of the people in the community.
That's great. When you think about, entrepreneurs that we talk to on a regular basis who are starting a business, they usually come to us and they say, I'm going to build one location. I'm going to get to 10 and I'm going to 100, then I'm going to 1,000 and this and that. And I'm like, just focus on the one location. When you think about where you are in life, being able to have this practice in the town that you live in, affect a lot of, people, but not only people, but obviously their families and their extended families. How do you kind of look at your own aspirations and say, you know what, if I have this one location, I can help X hundreds of people. That's good. I'm good with that.
It's a really interesting question because I think when we first started, my partner Deb and I, our brains were like, okay, we can do retreats and we can do this. But you know what? It's really nice affecting our community. And that's why, like, we even looked in the other towns that were surrounding our town. it wasn't right to us. For us, we wanted to be like we are dead center in our town.
Right.
And we can affect our friends' parents and our friends and that's really what we were looking for. And I think that for us is beautiful. And we're both moms, so I don't want to go too big. I like being virtual as far as what I do because I can help people all over the world, and I do. However, balance is super important as a mom. I'm a wife, I'm a mom. I just think that you have to know your limits. And if I went too big, I think I would just crash.
Yeah. I think that's important because a lot of entrepreneurs, say, hey, I wish I didn't go into that next city because I missed this little league game, or I can't be there now because I'm, sitting in an airport trying to get from city to city, or I'm trying to build a team and I can't replace them because, I don't know the community, or I picked the wrong location because I don't know what the traffic habits are there, or the types of pricing or how people think in those areas. So I reward you, and I think it's important for people to say, hey, look, I can accomplish something big, but it doesn't actually need to leave my community, and that's big enough on its own. When you think about all the different technologies, and that we're invested in higher dose, which is infrared. You've got a lot of cryotherapy out there. You've got Normatec booths. You've got hot, cold plunges. You've got meditation. Where do you, and obviously it's continuous learning, and some of this has data and medical fact behind it, and some of it is like, hey, that sounds really cool, let's try it, and I'm not really sure what the outcomes are, but it feels good, when I'm in or out of it. So how do you kind of calibrate, maybe like what's real, what's bullshit, and this might be interesting, but it's really not something I would ever put in a wealth center because it's not necessarily the way I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one thing that's made us super successful is really what we put into our well center is things that we use, right? Things that we stand by. Everything in our retail shop are products that we use or, we know. It's funny you say that because I use my higher dose, blanket 3 times a week. We're actually getting red light therapy into the center. And that's something that both my partner and I, have been using for many, many years. So now, so I think everything we do, we have to stand behind. There is so much out there. I also think that what's made us successful is really kind of streamlining our strong parts of our business. Like I remember you and I first having a conversation when I was first opening, and you know everything in the Halo sector, and you were like, you could do this and this and this. And I think we did open up with a few things. Like we did classes, we had our hands in a lot. And it was very overwhelming. And so one thing we did learn is that we have to streamline and focus, or else we're not going to be successful in what we're really good at in our genius zones, really. So I do think there's a lot out there. I mean, I have a cold tub that we just installed. We have our infrared. I love a lot of these things. And I also think there's other centers that have it in the area. So you don't want to use, it's good that they have it. And maybe phase 2, like we're definitely thinking about what's our next phase, right? Are we going to go much bigger, even though we're still local? Are we going to go bigger and kind of bring a lot of these things in? But at the moment, we're really just trying to stay focused.
Got it. One thing that is becoming a bigger and bigger concern just across everyone's radar is, privacy of information. And at the same time, you get some spectacular outcomes for people. And you don't want to necessarily say, Alicia from Pleasantville came here with this ailment and we solved this, and basically like use that as a marketing vehicle. At the same time, there's probably 100 people that have that same issue. So how do you kind of toggle between, hey, I want to showcase what we're doing. I probably want to do it maybe on a no-names basis, or maybe somebody kind of becomes an ambassador or champion and is out there for you, to say, hey, this is where it got done.
Yeah, it's really interesting because actually our biggest marketing ploy is referrals because,
Right.
I think we've made such an impact in a lot of people's lives that they, everyone we find, like we've done ads, we've done marketing, it doesn't do anything. It's really the people that are, I've heard it. I heard you were amazing. I've heard you're amazing. And so for us, that's been our biggest thing. And I think the one thing we can do better is testimonials, right? And I actually just wrote a whole email about that, trying to get some, because we just want to do what we do because we love it and we want to help people. But ultimately building a business, you need referrals, you need testimonials, you need people out there kind of being your ambassadors. So I
Yeah.
agree. Something we're working on.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. And I don't want you to give me an answer with an exact price point, but if you solve something for me, if I have a stomach ache and I have a stomach ache for 10 years and, maybe it's more complicated than just, don't drink dairy or don't eat dairy, but it's like a sequencing of everything that you found. That is almost like the MasterCard of like the priceless commercial, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what can you do to help me not feel pain or not feel, the pressure or not, basically be able to live my best self. So how do you think about, how do I price that? And like, what's fair and what is, what's it really worth to you? I know what it's worth to you. Obviously, I'm not going to charge that. But I think a lot of people in the Halo sector and the, wellness sector, or whatever we want to call it, you know, maybe sometimes undercharge for what the outcomes are. And I just want maybe you to kind of opine on how to think about that, because people pay a lot of money for a lot of things, whether it's a
Absolutely.
car or something material. And if you're going to buy, one of my clients just bought like a Jeep Wrangler with a Hemi and told me it was $100,000. Okay. Well, if you solved his, ailment, it's probably worth more than that. So how do you think about that as a practitioner?
I think it's interesting because I think a lot of people in the wellness space and in the Halo space kind of just they underestimate what they're worth, right? And agree, because if I do solve your problem, which I would, it is priceless. And so for me, I had to do a lot of thinking and I had to do a lot of writing and I had to do a lot of talking to myself, because when I launched my program, at first I wanted to go too small. And I was like, no, this is my time. What is my time worth? And, you're doing a service, because I think a lot of us want to help people and we're in this space because we want to help people. And that's
Sure.
why it's hard to put a price on it, because it feels selfless a little bit. And so you don't want to put a price, but you have to, because people need to pay. And you know what? Someone will come into my office with a name brand designer bag. That's my version of a car.
Right, right.
And they're hemming and hawing over a couple $1,000s, but really, ultimately, it's your health. It's, do you want to have energy in the morning? What's it worth to you? Do you want to feel good? Do you want to have a meal without feeling bloated? All these things that are lifestyle, but it doesn't equate to something that's material.
Yeah. So when you take a look at more and more corporations spending money on whether it's preventative health, whether it's I'm going to pay for your health club membership, I am going to, provide challenges, or I'm going to reward you financially. Are any of the practices right now that you're performing reimbursable, or is everything out of pocket right now? And do you see that trend potentially changing to say, look, I'm going to solve this problem. It's going to be 1/10 of what it's going to cost when this turns into, a disease that you have to treat, with more severe medicine or more, operations.
Yeah, no, I think that's true, and I think that unfortunately, insurance doesn't cover functional testing, and it's really sad because it's preventative. So it's something that I talk to my clients daily about. Hopefully, at some point, that will change in the near future. But I do think a gym membership, I think all of that, it goes to your lifestyle. It should be reimbursable. It should be expensible. I listened to your podcast, your last one with the guy from Nest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I totally agree. I love what he's doing, because it was all about reimbursing and kind of following your trends to get your lifestyle up to where it needs to be.
Great. From a standpoint of you being able to interact with other people at your level, are there groups that are being formed, with your type of, combination, or do you kind of have to dip into different types of, expert groups or networking groups or conventions or events in order to kind of, level up to like, hey, this is interesting? Because there's a lot of, I'm assuming there would be like amazing cross learnings of like, hey, this is working for you. You might have found something that's not out there right now. You kind of do research at the same time as you're doing a practice.
Oh, 100%. I think half of my day is spent researching and learning and still educating myself. And then half of it's, working with patients. But I think it's a mix of both. I am in a network groups where I with these amazing, usually more women based, but we just all help each other. We connect each other. I think one of my biggest strengths is connecting with people and just I am a people person. So I think that's really helped my business. So it's been part of that. And then it's also been connecting with people that are in your field, because if you don't have a mentor or, or people that you can learn from in your space, then you're going to kind of pigeonhole yourself and you're going to kind of put yourself in a corner. So there are people, I think there's some functional medicine doctors that I've used in the past that I refer to, that I truly respect and use on a, daily for feedback.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of the things that I've been exposed to in the, in the workout recovery or the preventative health is that no one's really cracked the code of like, what's the right sequencing to do something. Almost like I'm looking for someone to come up with like, here's like the Candyland trail of, if you're going to do infrared, you should do that before you do cryo. If I do cryo, I probably shouldn't do, Normatec boots because my, blood pressure is elevated. Or, do you kind of have something at the well center? Is almost like, here's like the equivalent of like, here's your workout routine. Here's your nutrition plan. Here's your workout recovery. Here's your preventive health. Is that formulated in your mind? Is that turning into something on paper?
I think that actually is part of phase 2 of what we're doing, is to really create plans for people. But I think, all the ways that you can, up level your life with, the infrared and the boots and all that stuff, it doesn't help if your internal systems are out of whack, right? So it all is amazing. I think I've seen big, changes when I do use the infrared or when I use the blankets, the infrared blankets. But that's great, but you need to have that base. You need to be eating healthy. Like that doesn't help you if you're eating sugar or if you're, eating gluten that your body doesn't like. So you really need to make sure that what you're, first of all, I think food is kind of the base. If you're going to ask me the first thing that I would change in someone. But I think it's all, I look at dress. So I look at diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplementation. Those are like my 5 pillars. And I think that they're all important. So if all your pillars are not there, then somehow the base is going to fall. But I do think that nutrition is the first place to start, because it does create the internal environment that your body needs.
Yeah. So in closing here, there's someone listening to this podcast right now that might be a graphic designer who might say, hey, I want to be where she is. Maybe like talk to that person and say, look, I put in thousands of hours, but if you feel like this is your calling, and you fill in the blank.
If you think this is your calling, then you have to follow your instinct. You have to live what you feel aligned with, because I was a graphic designer. I was kind of working on clients and not comfortable and not really like, I would love the thrill of work, like of meeting somebody, and then I wouldn't want to work on them. So I knew that it didn't feel aligned for me. And so one day the email came in and said, oh, get your health coaching license. I was like, this is what I need. And when you don't question it, and when you just feel in your body and every cell in your body that this is the right path for you, then you have to follow your heart and your gut, really.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it was great to talk to you on the business side. I'm very proud of what you've accomplished and look forward to reconnecting and telling us other things that you figured out that you're going to help people live a healthier, longer life and with less pain and more halo in their DNA. So thanks for what you're doing. It's great to see you. And, let's just keep going down the path, because it's all about just learning more, and experience gets more experience. So thank you for your efforts.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me today.